So, Amy, thank you so much
Yes.
for coming onto the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, I've been very excited, been researching you, learning lots about you, and I'm very inspired by your career. So, one, I of course want to dive into everything Madison Reed, but before that, can we kind of go back to you are a four-time founder at this point.
Yes.
You call yourself an accidental venture capitalist, which I love.
Yeah.
I can relate to that. And I kind of want to go back to first founder Amy, building your first company
Okay.
and what that version of you looked like.
Um, First founder Amy, probably more surety than I have now, which I think that we find ourselves through wisdom and struggles and those kinds of things. So, first founder Amy probably had more surety than she should have. Always really focused on people, so that's been a constant. Didn't have as My first company was not venture backed. I took I had a very small 401k and I leveraged all of it myself and took out credit cards and then convinced a friend of mine's father to put in 100 grand, and then I paid him back within 6 months and never took any more money.
Wow.
And that was it was a different business, but we were profitable and self-funded, and so I was scrappy, trying to make it work, but I wasn't venture backed, and I didn't have as much experience, but very people focused and good at focusing on what I wanted and then accomplishing that. So very, very driven, and no work life balance, zero.
Yeah, that sounds pretty quintessential entrepreneur.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Um, yeah. Go ahead.
No, that's I love that. So I feel like one becoming if when you first founded your first company, were you right out of college or where were you at in your
No,
like
I had actually been an investment banker, and then I went back to business school, and then I went back to being an investment banker, and then I founded the first company shortly after that. The second stint, as I said, it wasn't good enough the first time that I didn't. It wasn't good for all those involved. I had to give it a second chance, and so I didn't. I didn't. Uh, in being investment banker just didn't really appeal to me. It's less of a team sport, and I'm sort of a team sport person.
yeah.
So yeah, so I started this first company then.
Did you always want to start your own company or was
Yeah,
there a point? No. Okay.
yeah. I
Yeah. Oh
always
yeah, okay.
was. Yeah, I was always. How do I say this? I don't want this to come out there. Like, I'm not particularly great at working for other people. And so, if that keeps being a constant in your life, then you start to realize, oh geez, maybe it's me. It's not the other people, right? And so I just learned that, and then I said, okay, this would be better if Amy wasn't working for other people. So what would it be like to do that myself? And I think it's consistently true. After number two, I actually went to a bigger company. Or after number one of startup, I went to a bigger company. That was called E-Trade at the time.
Yeah.
And that too was like, oh, this feels familiar. It's really cool, and I love what we're doing, but I'm not so good at this, right? Because I align. How do I say this? Like, running a company for me is having to align mission and purpose, and getting people on the track to align mission and purpose. And so, mission and purpose is typically within a founder's sort of DNA. And so, whenever I kind of feel like mission and purpose are not linked with each other, which happens a lot in other bigger companies, right? Because
Yeah.
there's a lot of, it's very hard at scale to align mission and purpose, right? We are, by the way, going through that, right? Because we're a much bigger company now with more people, and it's just not a headquarters or a handful of stores. It's actually out in the field. How do you get that mission immersed with people, which is why we're so particular about our branding and how the store looks and the training, and right, because it's all those things. Like, I had the good privilege of working with Howard Schultz when I was a venture capitalist. And the
Mhm.
one thing you start realizing pretty quickly is like, a Starbucks when you walk in one, right? And like, what is that? And there's been ups and downs like any other company, but what happens in that thing where the magic when you see it? And I think it's when the brand holds a soul with a mission and a purpose. Very hard to continue that once companies get past a certain size.
Yeah, I can imagine. And I was actually going to ask you that of what you learned working with Howard Schultz. But
Yeah.
would you say that was a big thing of building the identity of your
Oh yeah.
brand?
Yeah. I mean, the guy is a genius of understanding. Taking this thing that was unlikely, coffee, and turning it into a household word. And he had a vision, he had a mission and purpose, and the way it was going to get done, and the baristas were going to get paid benefits. And so I learned a lot from that. And I learned, I was involved with Howard, via a Mavron, which is the venture fund, and we only invested in consumer. And so then the ability for me to see that in other people's business models, right, and experience when it worked and experience sometimes when it doesn't work, which is the name of the game adventure, right? You learn just as much and maybe more on the things that don't work as you do the things that do work. I used to say all the time that life over a period of time is it's pattern recognition, right, as I call it. And you can't be great at it, but you see enough things over time to be like, oh, that one isn't good, I'll stay away from that, or that's my zone of genius and that's where I should operate. So yeah, I learned a lot. It was an honor. um, and I always had that craving for that operating DNA again. So the reason that I didn't stay being a full-time venture capitalist had nothing to do with Maverick or Howard. It had everything to do with that, like, yearning is the best word
Yeah.
that I would call it, right? To just build a team and take on something. And I guess hair color is probably as esoteric as coffee was 25 years ago. So maybe we're onto something here.
Oh, and I'm sure meeting with all of these passionate entrepreneurs, you're probably going crazy, like part of you needing to get back to creating
Well,
again.
I would always like be in the pitches listening to them and then thinking like, oh, this is what I want to be doing. I remember being at board meetings, and I kind of I was the board member, and I'd remember this feeling like, oh my God, I just am so, I wish I was in that seat, right? Where the other board members were like in their, as I say, in their Teslas, right? Because that's what VCs do. I don't have a Tesla. They were like in their cars, woof, gone, right? Right after the board meeting, because you know, uh, it just takes two different sides of your brain. One isn't better than the other. I would say that I'm so much of a better operator now than because I was a VC.
Oh, I'm sure you
Yeah,
probably learned so much on that
yeah.
side. So let's fast forward then to Madison Reed.
Mm.
So, what was it within you? What was the point where you're like, I am going to build a hair care brand?
When I saw the size of the prize, meaning how big it was, when I figured out that the repetitive nature of the business model is perfect for the kind of business unit economics that you would want or need. It has very high margins,
Mhm.
right? Repetition or continuous use is built into the practice,
Yep.
right? It's like I'm not having to do something to have you buy the second shirt, which you
Yep.
might not need.
Recurring
But if,
revenue.
yes, subscribable, which was great. Technology enablement, meaning it was clear to me that the what existed was really bad. So there
Mm.
was no assistance, right? And in addition, that terrible aisle at Walgreens, highly toxic. So I knew that we could innovate. And let me go back. When I was a venture capitalist, I used to think about things in three vectors, and I would only take one out of three risks at early stage, but
Mm.
I wouldn't take the one piece that I'm going to share with you. So the first vector was size of the market, and I could actually and invest in things that I wasn't certain, because if they were good enough, they should either create a market or they would take market share from some adjacent market and create a big market. Check. Hair color, size of the market. Check. Two was product innovation. And I would trade size of the market as more of a risk than I would product innovation, because product innovation is sort of everything. And in our case, I knew right off the bat that the ingredients were terrible in existing hair color right away. That the unboxing, like to even call it a box, is a stretch of one's imagination. Like the terrible gloves and the horrible componentry, and nothing was recyclable. There was no sustainability. It smelled terrible, right? It just was a bad experience. No instructions that you could. So I knew there was product innovation we could do. And then when I coupled that with technology innovation, meaning that your phone could be this mechanism to color match you, and we could build an algorithm and predict what color you were going to be by just having you answer these 18 questions in a quiz, right? So that was like, ooh, juicy. And then the third vector was always people and team. And as a venture capitalist, I would never take the people team risk.
Mm.
So it left me always with two, right? So when I saw like, oh, I could build a great team, check. We could have product and addressable market, check, check. Then I was like, okay, we can figure this out. Now, I knew nothing about hair color, zero. And so, there was a belief system that that I could, and my co-founders could wind their way through, getting to the right people. And what you also learn as a venture capitalist is, like, if you want to go deep in a subject, you can figure it out. Like, you can find experts, right? And
Right.
so that's kind of what I did.
Always, yeah. And one of the things on your must list was not years and years of experience in that sector.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
The
And
team will figure out what you need to figure out.
exactly. So once I saw that, I thought there was a really big chance here. What I didn't see, just in all honesty, like all transparency, is I didn't know how much we could actually disrupt both sides. Like, I knew we could disrupt the shelf. But remember, only 52% of women in the US color at home. So I was sitting with almost 50% of the market thinking, like, well, I'm not going to get them. So then what to do, right? So I would say that the longer shot, I wouldn't say easier, the shot about disrupting the box, the at-home market, felt like was right in our line of sight. And we've done a pretty good job there. The line of sight of the salons was a more distant line of sight that I didn't necessarily know that we could disrupt. And now it's, totally crystal clear.
Yeah, which I'm sure is a pleasant surprise. It's better to go that way than the other way.
Yeah, we've had some of the other ways. Yep.
So, first of all, I love the product so much. I
Thank you.
love that you guys have taken away the toxicity and all of these chemicals that are in hair care. I just think it's amazing. You can just smell it. I love that you talk about, like, not even just for consumers, but for hairstylists who are
Oh,
sitting and smelling this all day. I
eight
think about
hours, 10
all the
hours a
time.
day, 5 days a week. Like, how you can't, there's no way that you could tell me that that doesn't have some impact.
Absolutely. I
Yes.
completely agree with you. So now, obviously, that was the moment where you knew that's what you were going to do. At this point in building this business, which I know has insane growth and rapid growth, what would you say is the hardest part of being the leader of this company?
Oh, wow. How long do you have? Um,
Long time.
okay, good. Um, hardest part. Uh, when you lead from love, there's always a gravitational pull that the world has to sort of convince you that that's nonsense. So the hardest part about being the leader is that I have to trust this piece inside of me that's kind of the North Star. And even when that's not clear to other people, or even when it seems like it's like, what do you mean? Like, we wouldn't do that. Or I have an internal meter inside of me, right? And so how do I continue to follow that North Star even in tough moments? And 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 be your authentic and transparent self, right?
Mhm.
So I just wear a lot of things on my sleeve. I'm very accessible for the entire company, and people like all the time are like, well, how does that scale? Well, I don't know, but I'm not worried about how does it scale. I'm just doing it, right? I still interview everybody before we make an HQ offer. I interview all of the leaders going into the hair color bars, the GMs, the district managers. And the reason that I do it is really simple, is I think when a founder or CEO doesn't pay attention to culture, the eventually the rails come off, the train comes off the track. It just does. Because human beings' gravitational pull is, to drama, to like all that stuff that happens, right? And so if you let that be the predominant culture, then you'll just eventually move your company from any specialness to just the lowest common denominator, right? And that can never happen here, nor will it ever happen here. So, how does that sync up in the face of growth? And there's the thing that I still spend a third of my time on culture, right? And it's like in every conversation I have, every interaction, like I'm holding that thing inside of me, which is like, does this seem like the fair thing to do or the right thing to do? Or how does that sync up with the five cultural values? And so, yeah, it's hard. And yet I'm a mission purpose person. So come hell or high water, I am going to prove that if you lead from love and transparency and authenticity, and you really are honest with your people and you explain the truth, just exactly what's happening, and you pay it forward in the benefit of the doubt of letting people know that I actually think there's a genius in you and I want to help you unlock that, the best will come out. And so, it's served me well so far here. That doesn't mean there haven't been bozo mistakes that Amy's made, about 50 a day. But it's more, how do I learn from them? How do I teach people that there should be a culture with no blame, but only the ability to realize that every single stumble we have along the way is just a window that opened into an opportunity that will get better.
That's incredible. And that's also, I would say, very rare to have the CEO and founder interviewing every single executive at the company, not just executive. Sounds like you're doing a lot more
Yeah, I'm
hiring than
doing it because I'm not really vetting for if they could be a great FP&A person or a
that.
great
Right.
logistics ops person. I'm doing it because I want to see if they're additive to our culture. And
Yeah.
and by the way, the more important thing, Jenna, is our culture additive to them? The
Hmm.
traditional workplace tells you the company's in charge, people just work for us.
Right.
I think that is a grave mistake.
Hmm.
The traditional workplace is that those days are over. I mean, look at what happened during COVID, right?
Yeah.
Like the great resignation is real. Well, why is it real? Because human beings went through and still are going through this enormous, like, you know none of us can say we lived through one of these before, right? So this is a sea change of everything in people's lives, everything, every decision. Where do you live? How do you work? What do you want for your children? I mean, just go down the list. What's most important to me? I mean, how many conversations hopefully you've had with your friends, which like, oh, there was a little bit of a silver lining. Like all of a sudden I realized like going out to dinner or all those other things that you put some level of status on were meaningless compared to keeping your family safe and understanding that your health and time are precious assets, right? So when you look at that and you think about what does that really mean, it means that people in the workforce were just like, okay, now I can look at me and what works for me. And I think it's hard. Look, we've hired hundreds of people, not just in the stores, but hundreds of people for HQ that are not in San Francisco. We would have
Mm-hmm.
never made that. And so what role is the office now? Like what? So my point about this is like, I'm vetting for that thing where I know that what we have is what the person wants and where the person can thrive. Not just they're great for us. It's got to be great for all of our team members too.
Yeah, no, I think it's amazing that you do this, and I'm so big on culture. I think it's everything. Um, but I also, while you're saying this, I'm like, that this is very inspiring, and then also I feel like you must be completely exhausted because that's a lot of pressure. That's a lot of
So
pressure.
I don't know if you know the Enneagram. If you don't,
Yes,
yeah, okay.
yes.
So I'm an 8. I don't know what you are.
Yeah. I
Um,
think I'm a 3.
yeah, that makes sense. You're
Yeah.
very well put together. You look great, and
No.
I have my baseball cap on and kind of not enough makeup. Um,
You look great.
but the thing about the 8 is they are the so energizer. So the people that work with me say, Amy is literally, she's a 110-volt plugged into a 220, plugged into a 440, and she's got an 880 generator in the back just in case the energy gets a little low. I don't. I mean, yeah, there are days where it feels exhausting, but we have a saying at Madison Reed. It drives me insane when people say, "Oh, I have to do this. I have to do this, or
Mhm.
I must do this." Right? Getting to a place in life where you get to do things. So our saying at Madison Reed is, "We get to do this."
Love it.
Right? And so I get to do this. This is an honor. Who gets to be on this ride? Like, from where I came, my gratitude is abundant every day. The I get to do this. I get to do this crazy business that empowers its customers and makes them feel great about themselves in a time in the world where like, we need more of this. We need more love, right? We need more positive energy and less drama and negativity. And then in addition to it, I get to have all these people be on this crazy ride. And I just hope and pray every single day, honestly. Like when I shut my eyes at night, I hope and I pray and I think, like, oh, could it be true that we actually made people's lives better? Could that be true,
Mm,
right? The folks that work in our stores, it's that in our entire workforce, 83% of people that work at Madison Reed are women.
yeah.
Over 50% are people of color.
Yeah.
Like, this is not frivolous. This is important for change in the world, right? Equality, working hard, being recognized for your contributions. Like, these are things that companies, if you really can change people's lives and their kids' lives, like, that's the part that I go to bed at night and I'm like, I can't wait for tomorrow because we can keep on doing this.
That's so powerful. And I love that you've taken an industry that has been around forever, and just by being intentional with it, you've created complete change in people's lives, which is beautiful.
Thank you.
So I heard something that you said in an interview that I loved and identified with very much. You said that you have a list of people
I know what you're going to say. Go ahead.
who you write down their names when they do not believe in you or they
Yes.
doubt you. And I love this just so you can thank them. And I want to know, one, how big is this list? And
Very
two,
big. Very big.
have you ever
Long.
gotten to the point where you have sent the email or made the phone
No.
call
No.
thanking them? No, yeah, okay.
No. Well, first of all, the whole fact that I don't or haven't must burn some of them anyway, right? Like it's like they've
Yeah.
heard me say it. They're like, "Oh, when's that coming?" Um, well, I haven't accomplished 100% of our goals yet.
Okay.
You see the real kicker of this is that how amazing would it be for us to create billions, not millions, but billions of dollars of value in a women's market,
Hmm.
where every guy in the world, do you know how many men have said to me when I've pitched them, the total addressable market can't be big enough. It's crazy. And I'm like, have you looked at your visa bill? Like, have you checked what's happening here? Like, this is nuts. This is like saying that there, I mean, I hate to, like, this is like saying, like, toilet paper doesn't exist and won't be purchased
Totally.
anymore. Like, it's just so absurd, right, from a gender standpoint. So that's one. Two is, so we're creating billions of dollars of value. Two is like, we're just doing this in the US. This is a global business. We haven't even started yet. Number
Yep.
three, it's sort of like, how many companies think every day about putting less what I would call empowering a workforce that has not had the same opportunities. How many people can say that with the surety that you're trying to do it in a way that's equitable, fair, open, growth happens, right? So I don't doubt anything that we're doing. I am just, now whether the company goes public, whether, I mean, whatever that is, this company will have earned it, and we will be ringing a bell for every woman that's ever been told, no, too small, nice little girl, you seem smart. Well, thank you. And, and and there's a lot of women that go on that list that have done that. And we stand on each other's shoulders. We do. We need to continually lift each other up. We need to continually have role models for girls to say, you can be good in math and science, by the way, and you can friggin' do anything that you want to do in life. There are no
Yes.
limitations, right? So, the metaphor of my list is just a metaphor that is sort of like, I'm competitive. Somebody said to me recently, you're a killer, but you're a kind killer. I said, okay, well, I'll take that.
I love that. You should trademark that.
Yeah, but my point is, like, the list is just a metaphor for doubting. And I think women get doubted all the time.
All
We
the
doubt
time.
ourselves,
Of course,
right?
more than
Like,
anyone probably.
yes, and so the whole construct when you're in a gender role is like, well, I can't, I shouldn't, right? So for me, it's just a reminder, and it's not like sometimes I hear when people say it, and it's, oh, like, does that sound too vicious? Does that sound like, no, it's just a reminder. And it's a reminder to open the aperture to people that don't ever doubt anybody. Don't ever doubt anybody, any woman, any person of color, anything, because here's what I know. When you get a group of people with a mission and a purpose who believe they're operating from the best of themselves, watch out.
Mm, that's so good. That is so, so good. Is there something, I know that the company's named after your daughter, and you
Yeah.
you mentioned not even just your daughter, but just what that represents as a
Yes.
metaphor for all of the
Yes.
girls who
Yes.
want to live their dream and go after what they want. Is there something that you like shakes you at your core where you're like, I wish the woman in the room didn't do that, or I wish like she knew this, or when women are pitching, or is there something where you're like, that kind of irks you that you want women to know?
Don't be subservient,
Yeah.
right? Don't and I don't mean this, I have seen this happen often where the woman comes in and right away she's feeling less than. And you
Mm-hmm.
could feel it in the dynamic. And so it plays out. So, it doesn't come easily, but like be confident that you're great because you are. Very few people get to a place where they can think of a business idea, articulate it, accomplish things that they do. So to me, it's always that I feel that, and I think part of our job in life is to educate allies because allyship is really how things change, you see, right? Things, I'm gay, I'm out, whoop-de-doo. It's like people are like, oh, okay, whatever, I like your shirt, I mean, all right. And
Crazy.
yeah,
Yeah.
well, it's just, I always look at things in life that people, 99.9% of the people are loving and have great hearts and they just haven't been educated. So that's the way I approach things in life, right?
Yeah, that's a
Just
good one.
exposure, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what I try to explain to people like all the time about how we need to stand on each other's shoulders is like when my wife and I were first together, there was no gay marriage, right? And we were early to have a kid. We had a kid, 19 years ago. Like that was blasphemy, right? Like how are you going to do that? And and
Yeah, wow.
and and what I think about now about this is that gay rights movement never happened because gay people talked to each other and said, "Hey, I think we should be able to get married, huh?" And then the other person said, "Yeah, oh, that's great," right? It happened because we educated straight people as allies,
So true.
okay? And this is what we're up against around misogyny, gender, racism. Like, allyship is the key because that's the door that unlocks the rest. And so I also spend time trying to explain to men in my life who I love dearly, and I have a ton of men in my life who are, some of my best friends, honestly,
Yeah.
that the allyship of what they stand for
Mm-hmm.
is what really makes the change. Because then if other men see it, they're like, oh, wow. And it's just education. And so part of the process of what everyone goes through is just education. There's fear. There's fear that a guy has a fear that he's going to say something wrong. It may not be in his heart to say something wrong, right? So the more that we open that up, the more that when somebody says something that's like a doofus, you stop and you say, I love you, but can I explain why that sounded this way? Rather than you're all blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't believe in any of that.
Yeah.
What I believe is that by educating people, opening up your heart, explaining why and who, the world does have the possibility to change. So, I look at all this and I think that part of why I'm competitive and part of why this is important to me is like I talk to eighth grade girls. Like it's one of the things that just over the years, somebody asked me once at a school and then it just kind of continued, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I asked them, the first question I asked them, Jenna, like they're all there and when it used to be in person and it will be again, they would sit on these steps, right? And I'd say, you're in eighth grade. You're going to go to high school, at least in California next year. How many of you were, when you were 3 or 4, wanted to be a princess? Like everybody's hand would go up. Maybe
Yeah.
there's an occasional one or two. Like, how many of you wanted a handsome prince to save you? How much is like, why?
Mm-hmm.
And then the girls would go, well, because of Disney movies, because of the messages, because of the. So, what is it saying to every girl? It's saying you're not capable by yourself,
Yep.
right? And we can buy into that. And even though I'm gay, there are still gender messages for me, right?
Yep.
Which is sort of like, don't be too loud in the room. Don't be too smart. Don't be, right? And
Totally.
so, yeah, but we either, I have never believed anger is the way to solve things. I've never believed that the way you do this is just force this on people. The way to do these things is by educating, learning, being curious, being trained, being right. And I think once we do that, yeah, there's going to be a lot of texts, um, and they're and
Yeah.
they're and I hope what the texts are are not like, oh, gee, see, look at me, us. I hope what the texts get interpreted is as, wow, I learned something.
Yes. Oh, so good. There's so many bits of this that are just so powerful. So, for Madison Reed, what is, as a last follow up, well, I guess, yeah, last question.
Okay.
What is the thing that you're most excited about looking into the future of Madison Reed?
Great question. Uh,
It's international. We've covered that.
yeah. This omni-channel approach is really different, and I think we are the example that will be the North Star for many people. You know, a 50-50 split between somebody who never wants to do their hair, right? Like what I try to tell people when we had only an at-home business, like, oh, I can't believe someone isn't using you. I'm like, you need to understand something. There's nothing against Amy or Madison Reed. They're just never going to do their hair at home, which is
Yeah,
perfectly fine, right? Which is
right,
great to know that.
right.
So I am excited about our ability to prove that making this product accessible to her and him, because we have men as customers,
Yeah,
anywhere that a person is, and that we're just, I am agnostic. If you want to buy our product at Ulta, great. If you want to come into a store and get a service from us, great. If you want to order online, pick up in store, great. If you want it delivered every 6 weeks to your door, great. Here's what I am really focused on. We are a prestige product in a sea of mass. And we will never produce anything in the company that has the, 8 ingredients that we've deemed to be 8 free. We are absolutely focused on making. I'm super excited about. We have some new products coming out this summer. I think they're amazing. I'm super excited about some of the new channels. We'll end up the year with 80 hair color bars. 80. When
that's
we closed
incredible.
in March of 2020, when we closed for COVID, we had 12.
Wow.
Okay, so we've opened 50 during COVID. 50 during COVID. And and because there's a need, and because we're going to fill it, and people haven't seen anything yet. Like, I believe you go forward, because it's an education process. 5 years from now, we'll be the brand. We'll be the people that have changed this industry brick by brick. These things never happen. I've been at this 8 years. People ask me all the time, like, oh, well, that's a long time. I'm like, to build an iconic brand, I don't think so. And
No.
we're just getting started, right? So, like, we have great team, great energy, great products, great distribution channels. And, we need to now execute. We're not looking for the country to attach ourselves to. We know what the North Star is, and now it's execution. So I just feel very grateful to be here. I do. And I think about, all the women that never got funded, and the women that's come before me, and the women that came out of great colleges and had to be somebody's executive assistant
Mm,
because, that's where you went, right? Like, honestly, that was the path, right? And there's so many women that have helped me. Like, so many women in my career early on as an investment banker who are like, you're a smart ass. Like, and pull me aside, like, don't do that, or do this, and in good ways,
yeah.
or gave me career opportunities that were probably beyond what I was capable of or thought I was at that moment. And we
Yeah.
must continue to push hard here, because, for all the little girls listening out there, or people that identify as girls,
Hmm.
you deserve to do anything you want to do in your life. And there is your gender, or your gender choice should never, never, ever, ever be the gating item.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. So, so good. Amy, thank you so much.
Welcome.
It's
Thank
been
you.
beyond inspiring.
Thank you. I really, I loved being here. Your questions were awesome, and thank you for doing your work.
Oh, thank you so much.